Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into the big headlines from USA Today's Sunday broadcast. That was May 4th, 2025.
Right.
We've got quite a mix: the economy, trade, politics, social stuff, markets.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, exactly. So our goal here is to, connect some of these dots, see what the bigger picture looks like beyond just the individual stories.
Sounds good. It often feels like these things are linked, even
Yeah.
when they seem separate at first glance.
Totally. Okay, so let's jump in with the economy. The first quarter numbers are out.
And it's a slight contraction, right? 0.3% down.
Yeah, 0.3%. That's the weakest performance since, what, early 2022?
That's right. And the report linked it to businesses building up their stockpiles.
Right, getting ready for, well, anticipating President Trump's new tariff policies, it seems.
Precisely. Those Liberation Day tariffs announced back on April 2nd.
What were the numbers on those again?
Well, there's a baseline of 10% on imports generally, but the really big one is the effective rate on Chinese goods jumping way up to 54%.
54%. Wow, that's quite a hike for businesses importing from China.
No question. It changes the calculations significantly.
And speaking of China, they seem to be signaling something.
Yeah, interestingly, they've said the door is open for trade talks with the U.S.
Hmm. So the economic pinch here, the tariffs,
Hmm.
could that be pushing them towards negotiation?
It's certainly a possibility, isn't it? Creates leverage, perhaps? Or maybe just acknowledges the economic reality.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Politically, there's the move to rename Veterans Day
Ah, yes, the proposal to call it Victory Day for World War I.
to mark the centennial of the war's end. That
Yeah.
feels like a pretty symbolic change.
Very symbolic. And these kinds of executive orders, these directives, they often stir up quite a bit of discussion about, history and national identity.
And another executive order making waves, cutting federal funds for PBS and NPR.
Right. The administration cited alleged bias in their reporting as the reason.
That's definitely sparked debate about public media funding and its role.
Absolutely. It's a perennial topic, but this brings it front and center again.
And while all this is happening, we saw protests on May 1st, May Day.
Uh-huh. Major cities, LA, Chicago, New York.
And the protesters' concerns seemed pretty focused.
Yeah, the reports mentioned labor rights, immigration policies, and also the recent federal layoffs under the Trump administration.
So you can sort of see a thread there, right?
Oh.
The economic anxieties, maybe linked to tariffs or layoffs.
Feeding into social responses, like protests. Yes, it's plausible these aren't happening in a vacuum. The political decisions, the economic climate, they have real-world effects.
Okay, now here's where it gets kind of counterintuitive, maybe.
Yeah.
Markets.
Ah, the stock market reaction.
Yeah, despite the economic contraction we talked about, global stocks actually surged on Friday.
Right. And the reason given was optimism about,
Yeah.
guess what?
Potential trade talks between the U.S. and China.
Exactly. It's fascinating. The market seems to be looking past the current economic data.
And betting on a future resolution.
Precisely. Investor confidence got a boost just from the possibility of talks. It shows how forward-looking markets can be, sometimes detached from immediate numbers.
It really highlights that global connection, doesn't it? Trade tensions rise, maybe hurt the economy, but the hope of them easing boosts the market.
It's a classic market dynamic, sentiment driving things.
And one more piece of data. Mortgage rates. The average 30-year fixed rate.
Still holding steady around 6.7%, wasn't it?
Yeah.
6.709% to be exact.
Yeah, pretty stable. How does that fit into this slightly confusing picture?
Well, stable rates could suggest some underlying confidence, perhaps, maybe in the housing market specifically, or it could reflect the Federal Reserve's stance trying to balance things out, or maybe the market thinks these economic headwinds, the contraction, might just be temporary. It's hard to say for sure.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've seen an economy contracting, possibly due to trade policies.
Policies which, paradoxically, might also be bringing China to the negotiating table.
Right. Then domestically, political moves like renaming holidays and cutting media funding.
Sparking debate, alongside certain responses like the May Day protests, likely fueled by some of those economic pressures.
And then the market throws a curveball, jumping on hope for trade talks, even with the weak economic report.
It's a complex web, definitely. Each piece influences the others.
So a final thought for you listening. How do you see these forces playing out in the next few months? You've got the economic pressure, the political shifts, the social reactions, and market optimism all churning together. What indicators will you be watching to see where things head next? Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.